Welcome to the Security on Cloud podcast, brought to you by Anitian, where cloud security and compliance are top of mind. Join the conversation with your hosts, John Vecchi and Scott Emo.
Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Security on Cloud podcast live on Anitian Radio. I'm your host, John Vecchi.
And I'm Scott Emo.
Today, we're going to talk about the theft of intellectual property and sensitive data across things like the defense industrial base and the supply chain at the Department of Defense. This represents one of the biggest threats to national security. And the new Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, what we call CMMC, was created by the DoD to actually combat these threats.
That's right. In this episode, we want to talk about this new cyber certification model, which has been a hot topic for over a year now. And given the latest SolarWinds attack, which affected multiple federal agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security and the DoD, there's never been a more perfect time to discuss the security requirements for federal agencies.
It's definitely true. So let's get some perspective on this. To help us break it all down, I'd like to introduce our guest for this week. He's a cybersecurity professional with over 27 years of IT and IT security experience. He's a certified information systems security professional and project management professional. His extensive background includes providing risk assessments, security test and evaluation, vulnerability assessments, security reviews, and audits for government agencies and commercial clients, most notably the Defense Health Agency, U.S. Air Force, and various Fortune 500 companies spanning multiple industries. He brings an impressive blend of knowledge of security controls and technical aspects of cybersecurity and IT operations. He joins us from A-Lign, where he's the federal practice lead. It's our pleasure to have with us today, Mr. Tony Bai. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. This is my first podcast.
Oh, that's awesome, Tony. No pressure. But as John mentioned, you are the federal practice lead over at A-Lign. Can you start by telling our listeners what is A-Lign and what do you do there?
So A-Lign is a cybersecurity partner to our various clients, right? So what we are primarily is a cybersecurity compliance and auditing firm. So we're one of a few worldwide that offers the breadth of cybersecurity certification assessments and audits in the industry. I mean, we handle PCI, we handle SOC 1 and 2, we handle high trust, we do privacy, and then the entire federal framework gambit, whether it's FISMA, RMF, FedRAMP, CMMC, 800-171, the whole bit.
Got it. And for those listeners, you can see we're in an industry that we call alphabet soup, right? You're hearing all these acronyms and there's a lot to keep track of. But specifically, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC. I'm guessing many of our listeners, Tony, probably haven't heard of CMMC before. Maybe they have. So let's start there, right? Tell us what it is and why is this being introduced?
Sure. So this is particular to DoD, right? It is being looked at by other agencies in all of the U.S. federal government. It's even being looked at by some U.S. allies to being adopted in some form or fashion. But what it is, it's an outgrowth of the NIST 800-171 requirements, which is the protection of controlled unclassified information in non-federal systems. When you talk about non-federal systems, you're talking about those systems that don't have a system accreditation by the government, whether it's RMF or FedRAMP or something like that. It's about essentially your corporate systems that may house sensitive government information that the government wants to be protected, and that's how they do it. 171 allows for self-attestation when you're doing business with the federal government. What the DoD found in some IG inspections or Inspector General inspections regarding this is the fact that a lot of companies may say they were 171 compliant, but they truly weren't. So the CMC is an outgrowth to address that, where it implements 171 or protection of CUI, but having a trusted third-party vendor validate that, right? And the issue of certification to demonstrate that validation. What they also did is added some flexibility to it, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. 171 is a one-size-fits-all, right? You have to meet all 110 control aspects and document that. Where with CMMC, based on the type of information that is being shared with you by the government or what you're producing on behalf of the government. Some have higher priority, some have lower priority based on the criticality. So they offer varying level certification, level 1 through level 5. So those are I guess you'd say, the major milestones or differences between 171 and CMMC.
Got it. Well, it's interesting, right? And as Scott mentioned at the top of the podcast, right now we're in real time. We've been living, probably one of the most prolific cyber attacks and breaches in a long time with the SolarWinds attack and the compromise of Orion with the Sunburst malware. Given we're talking to you today about CMMC, and this is very much focused on the DoD, and which by the way was potentially one of the agencies compromised by the SolarWinds attack. Does that affect CMMC, Tony, or does it put any more importance or focus on it in any way? Or
I think it calls into attention to the fact that we need to concentrate on supply chain risk management, which what CMMC is really applying, right? Is supply chain risk management, because it's about protecting that government information with their prime contractors, and then the flow down requirements from the primes to their subs and the subs to their subs type thing, right? Now, would CMC have really protected against a backdoor into security, into a tool set that was used by various companies that caused this event, right? Honestly, I don't think so, because CMMC is concentrating on protecting that government information, not necessarily secure engineering practices and DevSecOps that really, I think, plays a greater role in what happened with the SolarWinds attack, because it was introducing a weakness into the source code of a tool that was leveraged by other vendors, right, like SolarWinds. That's not necessarily protecting government information, right?
That makes sense.
It's more of a security engineering aspect.
Yep. Yeah. So that totally makes sense. Well, so Tony, so then who needs to meet CMMC, and and how would they do it? Like who needs to worry about this?
Well, CMMC right now is only a requirement when it's in the specific contract that a company has with the government, right? So, or with the DoD specifically. So basically, if you want to do business with the DoD, you need to worry about becoming CMMC certified when it starts up. It's mandatory for the primes, the ones that directly hold the contracts with the DoD. Again, the caveat is that the CMMC requirement is within the contract with them. Now, it should, because it's the DFAR 7012 clause. Any sub to that prime will have to abide by it based upon the CUI that is shared from the prime to the sub, right? So if the prime says they have to be CMMC level 3 certified because they're getting CUI or producing CUI for the DoD, if they don't share that same information to their subs, and the subs don't necessarily have to be CMMC level 3, they could be CMMC level 1, which is the federal contract information. That's more like the accounting practices, that sort of stuff, right? So it all depends from one tier to the next of what is being shared that will determine the level that's required. Now, ultimate responsibility is still with the prime contract holder that has that contract with the DoD.
Got it. So there are multiple levels, right, Tony? I mean, is there five? There are five distinct levels, or four? For
so
CMMC?
CMMC is divided to levels 1 through 5, right? So one applies the FARS clause, security requirements. They're like 17. It's basic cybersecurity hygiene type stuff, right? Level 3 outlines the equivalent of 171. In fact, it incorporates all 110 controls that 171 outlines, plus an additional 20 that the DoD created with their working group that developed the CMMC framework. Levels 4 and 5 add in additional controls that are really designed for protection of data that they're worried about advanced persistent threats, like from nation state actors, that sort of stuff. And the controls that they derive those from are from like the draft NIST special publication 800-172. So that's where those three. Level 2 you'll hear talked about. It's not likely to ever be actually implemented or required by the federal government or DoD. It's more of a, I guess what I've been told is like a stepping stone. It shows how a company can go from level 1 to level 3. Just more of a tracking or progression to get to that level 3 status.
Got it. Okay. So given, we talk cloud on this program, and, as we know, the government has been, really building this cloud first approach. And today, if you're, say, a cloud-based software vendor or independent software vendor, building cloud applications that the government wants and needs, they'll be meeting what we call FedRAMP, right? Some might know that, but that's the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. Very, and very specifically, cloud-based software vendors, right? So a couple questions there. I'm assuming if someone's listening to us today and they work for a cloud-based, software vendor meeting FedRAMP, I'm assuming they will need to meet this. Yes, and is it? Will the CMMC encompass more than just cloud-based provider solutions? Will it be everything, or?
Yes. So CMC is designed for everything. It's protecting government info, whether it's on-prem to the DoD, whether it's a web application, or it's a full cloud service offering, right? Everyone that does business with DoD will eventually need to do this. There is a transition plan that's outlined in the interim rule, the DFAR 7012 interim rule that was finalized at the end of November of last year, that introduces what that transition plan looks like. So like this first year, they're only going to designate like 15 contracts that'll have the CMC requirement. And then it essentially kind of doubles each year for 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, all DoD contracts will have the CMC requirement rather than just the 171 requirement. So that's the plan. Obviously there could be changes and tweaks to that rule as this rolls out, but right now it's something to prep for, and the best way to prep is making sure that you're compliant with the 171.
So if you're just a follow up, and if they're FedRAMP compliant today, is in your view kind of everything you're looking at with CMMC and ramping up for it, will it be a difficult task?
It shouldn't
those
be,
guys?
I don't see it being too difficult. So the thing to remember is FedRAMP and a lot of the other cybersecurity frameworks are system specific, right? FedRAMP is about a cloud service offering, a cloud service solution that you offer to the government, right? The difference is that CMC is about protecting CUI wherever it's stored, wherever it's processed, or wherever it's transmitted. So if your data flow, understand the data flow of CUI that's coming in or coming into the company or being generated by a company, if it resides within the same boundary as FedRAMP, a lot of your work will be done for you because you already have a lot of those policies, procedures, controls implemented because of FedRAMP, right? But the minute that you see that CUI is outside of that boundary, you still have to apply those CMC controls or 171 controls to the information that's protected outside the boundary because your FedRAMP only covers within the boundary. So that's why you're always whether you need to redo the work or apply that work to outside your boundary is going to depend on each company and how they've been able to restrict that government information.
Got it. And again, for our listeners, the CUI is specifically the Controlled Unclassified Information, right? That's kind of that's what everyone's really focused on there. Yes. Yep.
And I'm sorry for the using all the acronyms. It's just second nature to me now.
It's all right. We love our acronyms, don't we? But Tony, you mentioned before that this is you've been talking about the DoD specifically, and this is in contracts that the DoD would put in CMMC. Do you see CMMC rolling out to other agencies, federal agencies as well, or do you think it's only going to be companies that are focused on selling to the DoD that's going to be affected by this?
Honestly, I think it will roll out to the rest. Katie Arrington, who's essentially the creator of this, she's the one that drove CMMC being created. She's the one that's always in the news and everything about CMMC, right? She's been pushing this over and over again, working with the CMC accreditation body, all of that. Her various talks that she has given has said that they are in talks with other federal agencies about adopting this. On my personal opinion, I think it will eventually happen because it offers a trust but verify mechanism that 171 currently just does not have. 171 is self-attestation. It's just more of the government saying, "Are you compliant with 171?" And the company's going, "Yep, yes, we are." But who's doing that independent validation or verification of it, right? That's why DoD did it, because they found a lot of companies were saying, "Yep, yes, we are," but either through unintentional misunderstanding of how that framework is supposed to be implemented, they truly weren't protected. And that's why you have such that concern, at least with DoD, about the exfiltration of data. I mean, you've seen some of these briefings where you look at the latest Chinese advanced strike fighter or whatever, the last fighter jet, right? And compare it to the F-23. Looks very familiar. They developed theirs in 5 years. I wonder how they did that.
Right. It's so true. Well, look, and it's interesting, right? As you're talking about this, now will have a third party validation. Again, at Anitian, and I think our two companies have worked together in full disclosure, right? We automate a lot of this process to really accelerate this, FedRAMP today, and obviously we're all looking at CMMC. But what does the assessment look like? So, because it's third party validation, what does the assessment and the process, look like for companies now looking to have to get certified to this?
Well, I mean, the actual assessment process is pretty much the same. I mean, all these assessment processes are essentially the same, right? You have a pre-assessment phase where the assessor or auditor is gaining knowledge and information about what they're going to look at, right? Whether it's documentation, architectural drawings, and then you set up these interviews, and then from that we look at what are the findings or nonconformities, and we notify the companies, so let them mitigate or remediate those findings. We take that into consideration, we write our report, and we submit that to whoever it needs to be submitted to. Obviously with the federal government, we are, as a third-party assessment organization, under CMMC, actually last month we got notified that we were officially designated as an official CMC third-party assessment organization, one of the first 20. We act as that trusted party, that trusted independent third agent on behalf of the government to make a recommendation, one way or the other, good or bad, right? Given that, we're not trying to play gotcha with the companies either. We want to be fully upfront. It's an open book test. It's just more of if something's wrong, we got to be honest about it and provided that information to them, because it's all about risk management. It's all about the government having the information to make a fully informed decision on whether they're willing to accept that risk or not, based on the pros and cons of the capability that the company is offering.
So Tony, when does all this CMMC stuff start? Right, we've been seeing this talked about for like over a year.
We're waiting for bated breath. Right, this thing is being pushed very fast. There's a lot of, to be fair, there's a lot of criticism about the CMC and about the implementation of this, right? And how fast and how they are, and then whether the information is coming out in an official or unofficial manner, that sort of stuff, right? To be fair with the CMC, this is going very quickly. The thing, it's almost wild west. They're trying to do their best. Is there room for criticism? Probably. Is some of it unjustified? I would say so. I mean, it depends on the situation. The latest information that I have or I've seen is a lot of it is based on the town hall they just did last month, the CMCAB did, to those parties that already registered and notified of whether they're provisional C3POs, they're provisional assessors, they've signed up to be certified assessors, and all that stuff. So my personal opinion about when the CMC certifications are actually going to start is probably going to be July of this year. This is based on the information that we got from the CMC town hall that the accreditation body held last month. A lot of it is going to be based on the certified assessors becoming available. They've already designated C3POs, or the organizations that will do the assessments. And from what the DoD faxes that just got updated this month, we may be actually issuing the certifications. I'm not sure about that yet. I'm going to seek better clarification on that from our aspect on that. But for the certified assessors, the reason why I say July is the fact that per the accreditation body, the training won't even be available till probably around April through their licensed training partners that they have in the marketplace. So that's where the certified assessors will go to get trained on CMMC. And then the beta exams to be certified as a CMC assessor won't be available till around May or June at the earliest, is what the accreditation body is saying. So then if you basically give them a month for CAs, potential CAs to test and then get actual officially certified by the AB to conduct these, probably won't be happening until July. So that's my opinion, my personal opinion on that. Now, again, there's going to be a huge rush on this. What I would urge companies to really look at what's happening, because CMC, again, isn't required by the government itself unless you're bidding on a contract that has that CMC requirement, or you're sub to a company that is bidding on it, right? Now, that's not to say that if a company has a lot of subs and they're just telling all their subs for ease of vendor risk management, saying all of you have to be CMC certified, that's a different story, right? But the availability of those assessments is going to be very limited in the beginning because those certified assessors have to be trained. And there's just only so much capacity to do that, especially when they're just starting the program.
Got it. Yeah. And so so right now, like all of you, those that are going to be assessors, I know Anitian, we're, to partner with you guys on this and others, we've just become a certified, registered provider organization. And there's all of these things happening. And, would love to talk, I think would love to hear from you. Like, what do providers that are in the supply chain are going to need this, what do they need to do as next steps? But first, I'm sure what's kind of interesting is, this isn't free, right? So what are some of the, is this expensive to do if you find yourself either, a main provider or in the supply chain, or what should organizations think relative to cost for all this?
I mean, okay, so with the, I mentioned the interim rule, the DFAR 12 interim rule that they finalized November 30th of last year. Mm-hmm. It gave the government assumptions on cost to the economy and to the players in this, right? How much do they estimate cost based on labor categories or roles? A senior assessor versus a staff type stuff. Frankly, I think those were a little bit low. Is this going to be inexpensive? It depends on level. If you're talking like a level 1, it should be fairly inexpensive. If you're talking about a level 3 or higher certification assessment, it's going to depend, because again, this is about wherever CUI resides. So if it's very pervasive in a corporate infrastructure where it's everywhere and they haven't really corralled it properly, I mean, just think about it. You have a team of 1 to 3 assessors having to look at the entire infrastructure and all the various systems in the corporation and interview all the people that are in charge of implementing security controls for those systems. I mean, you're talking, there's a difference between 2 or 3 systems and interviewing 20, 30 people, which could be fairly inexpensive, to say it's an enterprise level where you got to worry about, say, 300 or 400 people that are in charge of various aspects of security controls. And then it covers about 20 to 30 systems. I mean, you're talking in a matter of a couple weeks of assessment time versus 6 to 8 weeks of assessment time.
Yeah. And with that, real quickly, so if you're a cloud provider that today, let's say, has FedRAMP certification, and you make a cloud delivered, cloud-based, application or software, will CMMC extend into, like you said, it covers cloud, on-premise, whatever. Is it safe to say for cloud providers who might have FedRAMP certification today focused on their cloud app, CMMC might extend into some kind of on-premise environment or assets that have nothing to do with their cloud app? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, it's going to be based on where CUI is. So,
okay.
So a lot of these cloud service offerings you're talking about, there are specific solutions you're selling to the government, right? That's what FedRAMP is. Mm-hmm. But what about all the ancillary data that is communicated via email or text messages? I'm just throwing stuff out of the air, right? But it's where that government sensitive information as classified CUI is coming into. If it's not directly limited to that FedRAMP boundary, then you got to apply those controls to your corporate systems that may encounter that information.
Yeah. So, I mean, for all those software vendors out there that are FedRAMP, you can just see immediately here how the scope of CMMC, right, begins to really expand from what these, right?
And those are a lot of questions we're all asking, right? Because it's a pain in the butt. I mean, it's what it is. Because of the pervasiveness and there's always those side channel communications, and CMC is trying to incorporate that stuff, and that's always going to be just it's not a trivial issue to try to tackle. There are various things. Now, I know that CMC does recognize the fact that there are security tools that could help with this, and they're trying to, from what I understand, create some sort of marketplace with pre-approved type products, right? So if you use these, it's known that these products will satisfy control X, Y, and Z type thing to help ease that thing. But remember, security is never just a technology solution. It's also people and processes, and you can't forget that. So I caution companies trying to look for a silver bullet, because there really is never going to be one.
Great. Well, hey, Tony, so how, I'm going to just switch gears here a little bit and ask, how do your customers typically engage with A-Lign? I mean, how do they get in touch with you guys, and how does that whole engagement work?
You talking about how they're just trying to acquire our services? I mean, they'll contact us. We'll set up those initial discovery calls to say, hey, what is it you need? Why do you need it? Right? Because again, we've always emphasized that we want to be a partner. So if it's something, now I've actually had initial calls where it's like, it really doesn't sound like you need this, or you need something different. And well, I'll tell you that up front. I mean, do we want your business? Yes, but we don't also want to just do it for the sake of making a dollar. If it's not going to be of value to you, I'll tell you. If you have an idea of how it needs to work, I'll give you the pros and cons, right? Because ultimately it's a business decision how the company wants to proceed. But it always starts with those discovery calls to say, what is it you need? Why do you need it? And what can we do to provide for that? And then from there, we work on timing and resource allocation, stuff like that. Obviously we can't reserve people to do these assessments without a signed contract. The normal things, right? We get partner referrals. And if it's not a right fit for us, we refer it out to various companies and partnerships like Anitian, where they can provide that consulting side, because we concentrate on the assessment side.
Got it. So it sounds like everybody, look, Tony, you and A-Lign, the team at A-Lign, are definitely there to help with companies that even initially might just want a discussion with you to understand the scope and how it applies to them. And so, for those listening, it sounds like a good first step is contact Tony and the team at A-Lign. Certainly, Anitian is involved in this as well, but we work very closely with you. Clearly, you've got the expertise, and people should definitely take advantage of that. It's so interesting. And with that, Tony, if any of our listeners do want to get in touch with you or the A-Lign team, where should they go? Tell them where they should go.
Obviously, they can always go to our website to www.align.com. We're out there on the web. You just do a search on CMMC, FedRAMP. We're on the FedRAMP marketplace. We're also on the CMMC marketplace, which they do have, because we're also designated C3PO for CMMC. So the CMC AB has their own marketplace on their site, which is, I believe, cmcab.org. So they can find our contact information out there as well.
Look, fantastic. I mean, it's a great discussion. It's so interesting. I mean, look, this is happening in real time. There's a lot of details to this, but really a great discussion, Tony. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And remember, the Security on Cloud podcast is brought to you by Anitian, the leading cloud security and compliance automation provider, delivering the fastest path to security and compliance in the cloud.
Thanks again to our guest, Tony Bai. Until we meet again, I'm John Vecchi.
And I'm Scott Emo.
See you next time on Anitian Radio.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Security on Cloud podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe so that you can join us again for another episode. And for tips, show notes, and more episodes, check us out at Anitian.com. See you next time.